in our country. As I say, there were reports from US administration persons and government people in Colombia. They offered support and encouragement to this attempted regime change. May I say to my Latin American Caribbean colleagues, may Latin America and the Caribbean, can you accept this kind of approach, these methods, which we suffered from throughout the 20th century? How many military interventions occurred? How many coups d'etats? How many dictatorships were imposed on us in the course of the 20th century in Latin America and the Caribbean? This was against our peoples. It was in the interests of the transnational corporations. We suffered from lengthy dictatorships such as Pinochet in Chile, and this harmed our people. And this was because of the United States' actions and their belief in the Monroe Doctrine, which said that we could not govern ourselves as we saw fit. This was against our political and cultural ways of life in our countries that they would not accept. And this is why I say to you, I have come to tell you the truth on behalf of our heroic people. There is a media campaign against us which seems to go on and on endlessly. And that is why I want to come here and tell you the truth about our country here in the United Nations. After the New York Times published this report about the failure of the attempt to impose a coup on us, this was a criminal attempt. It failed. After the 20 May presidential election, where I, Nicolás Maduro Morón, received 68% of the people's vote in free elections. This was the 24th election in less than 20 years. The election was on the 20th of May. It was the 24th election we had held. And the revolutionary forces of our country, with different levels of approval, have always won. We won 22 of those 24 elections which were held in our country. So after the failure of the attempt at the military coup, after the failure of the candidatures and the electoral tricks of Washington, on 4 August,
and she takes content like, can we just...
a terrorist attack with drones
was
carried out against me in an attempt to assassinate me in a military manner in a major avenue in Caracas, the capital of our country. And as is well known, there was a massacre, and so many political and military leaders in my country were in fact killed. And on that 4th of August, the material actors, the terrorists that had used this drone attack, and it was the first attack with drones, the first drone attack in terrorist terms in the world. Those who were responsible were captured by our police, and all of those who were involved, there were 28 persons. They were seized during our investigation of what had happened. And they all confessed to what they had done. And the investigation was a public one, and it was made known to all the governments of the world. Investigations showed that the 4 August attack was prepared and funded from the territory of the United States of North America. This was made known to the U.S. government, and we made known to the U.S. government, the person who was responsible for this, the names of those who were involved in planning this very serious terrorist attack of 4 August. All investigations showed that the attack involved people who had been trained in Colombia with support from Colombian authorities. And the most recent investigations
Are you crazy?
which have been made known to the public show that some diplomats in Chile and Colombia and Mexico had been cited by those who were materially responsible for the attack, and they were supposed to help the persons escape after they had carried out the terrorist attack. We would request that a special rapporteur be appointed here in the United Nations to carry out an independent international investigation on the terrorist attack on my country on 4 August last. Venezuela is very open to this idea. Our justice system wants to make sure that we find out who was directly responsible for this very serious attack. Because of the implications, it was an attempt to create chaos in my country, so as to justify an internal conflict and clash, a level of violence which would then justify the imposition of mechanisms outside of the multilateral system of the United Nations, namely a military intervention in our country, such as others have suffered from in the past. And so Venezuela formally proposes distinguished ambassadors. We request your support for an independent international investigation, a fact-finding mission to establish the truth of what happened on the 4th of August. And I myself have said to the United States government that it would be good if the US government, which denied being involved in the preparation and carrying out of this attack, that it would be a good idea if the United States government heeded the appeal made that the high-level professionals should be involved in the investigation so as to help the Venezuelan investigators establish the truth. On arriving in New York today, this afternoon, I heard that some journalists had asked President Trump if he was willing to meet with Maduro, that's what they called me, with Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela. And apparently Donald Trump said in one of his replies today that if this would help Venezuela, he would be willing to have such a meeting. And let me say from this very rostrum despite the enormous historic differences, despite the enormous ideological differences, despite the enormous social differences. I am a worker, a driver, a man of the people. I'm not a magnate. I am not a multimillionaire. Despite all of the differences, the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, would be willing, I am willing to reach out my hand to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and discuss these matters bilaterally, these matters involving our region. Venezuela has a tradition of being a peaceful nation. Venezuela is a very friendly country, and we have not forgotten the United States. Rather, we appreciate the culture, the art of the United States, and the social